I've heard a lot in my life. Crying, begging, apologies that come too late. But there's a certain kind of confidence that has a sound to it, and it isn't strength, it's performance. That morning, I heard it before I even saw him. It was a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday where Providence is running on routine. People in line, holding paperwork, parents with tired eyes, a man in a work uniform rubbing his hands together like he hasn't slept. Christina had my coffee ready, strong, the way my father liked it. I was looking over the docket when I saw the name. Evan Ease Cade. In court, you see all kinds of names. But that one had something extra attached to it, not just ink on paper. I'd seen it on posters, on billboards, on the sides of buses. The file had a sticky note from Christina. It just said, "Judge, you might want to be ready." I asked her, ready for what? She didn't answer right away. She just tilted her head toward the gallery. That's when I noticed it. There were more people than usual, not the regular observers, not law students, not locals killing time. These were young faces, holding phones like they were tickets to a show. Some of them weren't even trying to hide it, filming before court even started. I saw two men with camera rigs pretending to be just friends. I've been doing this a long time. I can tell when someone's here for justice and when someone's here for content. At 9 sharp, Christina called, "All rise." The room stood, and then the door opened. He walked in like a headline. Designer jacket, sunglasses indoors, a chain that probably cost more than my first car. Behind him, 3 people orbited him like moons. One held a phone up at eye level, recording his face from a flattering angle. Another carried a small microphone. A third had a clipboard, like this was a business meeting. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look respectful. He looked entertained. He glanced at the crowd and gave them a half smile. The phones rose higher, like sunflowers turning to light. Then he looked up at me, and I saw it immediately. That expression, not fear, not regret, just certainty. The kind of certainty you get when the world has been clapping for you too long. Christina called his case. Evan Cade, failure to appear, reckless driving, and violation of a court-issued protective order. Protective order, that phrase changes the temperature in a room, because reckless driving is one thing. But a protective order means somebody was scared enough to ask the law to step in. Somebody felt threatened. Somebody couldn't sleep at night. Somebody was afraid. Mr. Cade stepped forward with a slow swagger. He turned just enough so the camera could catch his good side. He didn't stand still. He didn't stop performing. Even his silence was staged. I let the moment settle. Then I spoke. "Mr. Cade," I said, "do you understand why you're here today?" He took off his sunglasses. Slowly, he looked right at me, like we were equals on a podcast. Then he smiled. "Yeah, Judge," he said, "but let's not do the dramatic thing. I've got millions of followers. This is going to be everywhere." I looked at him for a moment, calm. "Mr. Cade," I said, "this courtroom is not a stage." He shrugged. "Everything's a stage now." That sentence told me exactly what kind of trouble I was dealing with. Not just arrogance, not just disrespect. A worldview where nothing was real, where everything was content, where people were audience members, not human beings. I opened the file again. I saw the name of the protected person, Lena Harper, 22 years old, no priors, 2 statements attached. Both sounded like fear written in ink. I took a breath. Then I looked back up at him. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you were ordered not to contact Ms. Harper, yet the report says you appeared at her workplace last Friday. Is that true?" He laughed, not nervous laughter, proud laughter. He leaned in a little, like he was letting me in on a secret. "Judge," he said, loud enough for every phone to catch it, "you can't touch me." The room went still. People stopped shifting in their seats. The cameras steadied. Even the air felt heavier. In that stillness, I heard my father's voice in my head, frank. "Never let a bully tell you the law is just a suggestion." I set my pen down. "Mr. Cade," I said quietly, "repeat that." He spread his arms like a king. I said, "You can't touch me." Then he pointed up toward the gallery, "Because they'll come for you." I looked past him at the cameras, and I realized something. This wasn't just disrespect. This was intimidation, wrapped in fame. He wasn't threatening me with violence. He was threatening me with exposure, with backlash, with virality. He believed the crowd gave him immunity. That's when I made a decision, not as a performer, not as a reaction, as a judge. I leaned forward. "Mr. Cade," I said, "in this courtroom, the law doesn't care how many people like your videos." He smirked. I turned my head slightly. "Bailiff," I said, "step forward." The influencer's smile began to fade, just a little. For the first time all morning, he could feel it. This wasn't his world anymore. This was mine. I've learned something over the years. When confidence starts cracking, it doesn't shatter all at once. It chips, small pieces first, then bigger ones. The bailiff stepped forward, calm, professional, no rush, no show, just presence. Evan didn't move. He didn't think he needed to. In his mind, the room was already his. "Judge," he said, spreading his hands, "this is being live-streamed. You really want to do this right now?" That question told me everything. He wasn't asking about the law, he was asking about optics. I looked at the phone still pointed at him, then at the faces behind it, kids barely old enough to vote, watching a courtroom like it was a reality show. I saw excitement in their eyes, anticipation. They were waiting for a plot twist, so I gave them one, but not the one they expected. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you failed to appear for court last month. That alone is grounds for immediate custody. You understand that, don't you?" He rolled his eyes. "Come on, Judge. My lawyer handled that. I had a brand deal out of state. You think a courtroom date is bigger than a contract?" A courtroom date. That's what he called it. Not a legal obligation, not a responsibility, a courtroom date. Like it was something you could reschedule when something better came along. I picked up the file and flipped to a photo clipped inside. Not glamorous, no filters, just a grainy still from a security camera. A young woman behind a counter, eyes wide, shoulders stiff, body language that screamed discomfort. "Ms. Harper," I said aloud. "Do you see her?" He glanced down for half a second, just enough to register recognition. Then he muttered, "She's nobody." That's when something shifted inside me. I've heard a lot of ugly words in my courtroom. Slurs, lies, excuses. But nobody always sticks, because it's how bullies justify harm. If someone is nobody, then nothing you do to them matters. If they don't have followers, they don't have value. "Mr. Cade," I said, my voice steady, "Ms. Harper came to this court asking for protection. Not attention, not clout, protection." He scoffed. "Protection from what?" I didn't touch her. The room reacted. A murmur, a few gasps. Someone whispered something I couldn't make out. I raised my hand. Silence returned. "Do you believe," I asked him, "that a protective order only applies if you physically touch someone?" He shrugged. "I believe people lie, especially when they want attention." I turned slightly and nodded to Christina. "Read the messages," I said. Christina hesitated for a moment, then began. Exhibit B, messages sent from Mr. Cade's verified account to Ms. Harper after the protective order was issued. Her voice echoed through the room. "You can't hide forever. You really want to do this to me? You know what happens when people cross me." The live stream comments must have been exploding. Phones shook slightly. Someone whispered, "That's bad." Evan's jaw tightened. "Those are fake," he said quickly. "Screenshots can be edited." I nodded. "That's why," I said, "we subpoenaed the platform." That's when his eyes changed. Just a flicker. But I saw it. The first crack. I continued. "Verified IP address, verified account, time-stamped, sent from your phone." He laughed again, but it was thinner now. "You're really going to arrest me over DMs?" he said. "You know how bad this looks for you?" There it was again, not fear of punishment, fear of losing control of the narrative. He was still trying to reframe this, to make it about me, about optics, about how it would play online. I leaned forward. "Mr. Cade," I said, "do you know what the most dangerous thing in this courtroom is?" He smirked. "You?" "No," I replied. "An audience that mistakes attention for immunity." I let that sit for a moment. Then I turned to the gallery. "Phones down," I said. No one moved. I looked at the bailiff. "Phones down," I repeated. This time officers stepped forward, firm, professional, no drama. You could feel the panic ripple through the room. People realized this wasn't content anymore. This was real. Evan raised his voice. "You can't do this. This is public. I have rights." "Yes," I said calmly. "You do." I paused. "And so does she." I flipped the file shut. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you violated a protective order. You failed to appear. And just now, you attempted to intimidate this court." He shook his head. smiling desperately now. "You're really going to put cuffs on me over some internet drama?" I stood. The room stood with me. "Bailiff," I said, "place Mr. Cade under arrest." For the first time, he stepped back. "Wait," he said. "Wait, wait." The cuffs clicked, metal on metal, and the sound echoed louder than any live stream ever could. His followers watched in silence. No cheers, no emojis, no comments scrolling by. And somewhere in that room, justice finally got the last word. I've seen that moment before, that exact second when someone realizes the rules they thought didn't apply absolutely do. Evan stood there frozen, cuffs locked, eyes darting around the room like he was waiting for someone to yell "cut." His mouth opened, then closed. The performance was gone. "This is insane," he muttered. You can't seriously be doing this." I looked at him calmly. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you were warned. By this court, in writing. The law didn't sneak up on you." He shook his head, laughed again, but this time the laugh was hollow. "You don't understand," he said. "This ruins everything. That sentence told me more than any confession. Not 'I'm sorry,' not 'I was wrong,' just 'this ruins me.' As if that was the tragedy here. Not what he did, but what it cost him." I nodded slowly. "You're right," I said. "It does change things, but it doesn't ruin what matters." The bailiff guided him to the side. As they moved, something unexpected happened. The gallery shifted. The same gallery that came for entertainment now sounded different. Confusion, discomfort, reality setting in, and then I saw her. Lena Harper. She was sitting in the back row, hood pulled up, shoulders tight, hands folded in her lap. She hadn't planned to be seen, but when the cuffs went on, she looked up. Our eyes met for a brief moment. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just breathed. A long, slow breath. Like she'd been holding it for weeks. I turned back to Evan. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you built a career on people watching you. Today, you forgot someone was watching who didn't have the power to turn you off." He swallowed hard. "I didn't hurt her," he said quietly. "I just wanted her to stop talking. Stop talking. That's how control works. You don't have to hit someone to scare them. You just have to remind them how small they are compared to your influence. You just have to make them feel invisible." "That," I said, "is exactly why protective orders exist." His lawyer finally stood, pale, flustered, 10 steps behind the moment. "Your Honor," he said, "we request immediate bail and—" I raised my hand. "No," I said. "We don't skip steps because someone has a following." I looked down at the file. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you will be remanded pending a bail hearing. No contact with Ms. Harper, direct or indirect. That includes social media, intermediaries, and public statements." Evan snapped his head up. "You can't control what my fans say," he said. I looked at him. "You'd be surprised how quiet things get," I said, "when accountability walks into the room." The bailiff moved him toward the holding area. As they passed the gallery, Evan turned once, just once. He looked at the phones that were now lowered. Screens dark, no cheers, no comments, no applause, just silence. When the door closed behind him, the room exhaled all at once, like everyone had been holding their breath. I called a brief recess. In chambers, Christina sat quietly. She poured herself a glass of water. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Judge," she said finally, "I've never seen a courtroom flip that fast." I nodded. "Because fame doesn't protect you from the law," I said. "It just delays the lesson." She smiled faintly. "He really thought he was untouchable." "They all do," I said, "until they're not." When we returned, I asked for Ms. Harper to step forward if she wished. She did, slowly, voice shaking, hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Ms. Harper," I said gently, "you are safe here." She nodded, eyes glossy with tears she was trying not to shed. "I didn't think anyone would believe me," she said. "Everyone told me to just disappear." Disappear. That word hit me harder than I expected. I shook my head. "No," I said. "That's not how justice works." She wiped her face quickly. "He kept saying you couldn't touch him," she said. I looked toward the holding door. "He was wrong," I said. Then I said something I meant with every part of me. "No one gets famous enough to erase fear." The courtroom was quiet again, not with shock this time, with respect. After Evan was taken downstairs, the courthouse changed its rhythm. The cameras were gone. The whispering stopped. People sat differently now, straighter, like they remembered where they were, like they remembered what a courtroom actually was. Later that afternoon, a clerk from downstairs approached the bench quietly. "Judge," she whispered, "Mr. Cade is requesting to speak with you, off the record." I didn't answer right away. In 40 years I've learned this. People who say off the record usually mean off accountability. "Bring him back," I said, "on the record." A few minutes later, Evan returned. No swagger this time. Hands cuffed in front, eyes red, jacket gone. He looked smaller now, not physically, humanly. "Mr. Cade," I said, "you wanted to speak." He nodded quickly. "Judge," he said, voice lower now. "This got out of hand. I never thought it would go this far." I leaned back slightly. "Far?" I asked. "You showed up at someone's workplace after a court told you not to. You told a judge he couldn't touch you. You encouraged an audience to pressure this courtroom. How far did you think it was supposed to go?" He swallowed. "I thought, worst case, it'd be a fine, a headline, nothing real. Nothing real." There it was again. That word. Real. As if consequences only existed when they happened to him. "Ms. Harper was afraid to leave her apartment," I said. "She changed her routine. She stopped answering her phone. She asked her boss to switch her shifts. That was real." He shook his head. "I never meant to scare her," he said. "Intent doesn't erase impact. That's a lesson some people never learn, especially those who've always landed on their feet." "Mr. Cade," I said, "do you know why influence comes with responsibility?" He didn't answer. "Because when you speak," I continued, "people listen, and when you intimidate, they feel it 10 times stronger." His shoulders slumped. "My fans, they won't understand this," he said. I met his eyes. "Then let them learn," I said. He looked down at the cuffs. Am I going to jail?" he asked. I didn't flinch. "You're going to face the law like everyone else." He nodded slowly. Then he asked something quietly. "Can I say something?" I waited. I really thought being famous meant being untouchable. There it was. The truth. Small, scared, finally honest. I stood. "Mr. Cade," I said, "fame is not armor. It's a spotlight. And when you stand in it long enough, everything shows." I ordered him remanded pending hearing. As he was led away again, he didn't look back this time. He just walked, head down. Later that afternoon, Christina handed me a note. "Judge," she said softly, "Ms. Harper asked me to give you this." It was a simple card, no fancy design, just plain paper. 4 words written carefully in pen. "Thank you for believing me." I held it longer than I needed to, because that right there is why this job matters. Not because you can touch someone, but because the law can. By the time evening came, the story had already escaped the courthouse. Not because of gossip, because of silence. When someone with millions of followers suddenly stops posting, people notice. By 6 p.m., Evan Cade's accounts went dark. No live streams, no explanations, no jokes, just a pinned statement from his legal team asking for privacy during an ongoing legal matter. Privacy. That word always shows up when performance ends. I didn't see any of it that night. I don't follow influencers. I barely follow sports. But the next morning, Christina walked into chambers holding a printout. "Judge," she said, "I thought you should see this." It was a screenshot of comments, not praise, not outrage, questions. "Wait, what actually happened? Why was he arrested? Is the girl okay?" That's when I knew something important had shifted, because for the first time, the spotlight wasn't on him. It was on accountability. At the bail hearing 2 days later, Evan Cade stood again before the court. This time without bravado, without cameras, without an audience to protect him, just him and the law. His lawyer argued that fame made him a flight risk, international travel, sponsorships, obligations overseas. I listened carefully. Then I asked one question. "Counselor," I said, "if your client has the power to influence millions, how much damage can he do to one person with a single post?" The room went still. Bail was set. Strict conditions. No internet access beyond legal communication, mandatory counseling, electronic monitoring. When I read them aloud, Evan nodded at every line. Not resistance, acceptance. Afterward, as officers escorted him out, he stopped briefly, turned back. "Judge," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" I nodded. Why didn't you hesitate? Good question. Because, I said, hesitation is what bullies count on. He looked down. I didn't think courts still worked like this, he said. They do, I replied, when people let them. Weeks later, Ms. Harper's case concluded quietly. No interviews, no headlines, just a restraining order made permanent, and a young woman, slowly reclaiming her life. She sent one more message through the clerk. I started sleeping again. That sentence mattered more than any verdict. Months passed. Evan pled guilty to violating the protective order and contempt of court. No special treatment, no exceptions. He served time. Not much, but enough. More importantly, he served consequences. When he was released, he didn't return online right away. And when he finally did, the first video wasn't flashy. No music, no editing, no sponsors. Just a man sitting alone in a room. He said one thing: I confused attention with power. I was wrong. No monetization attached. No comments enabled. Just truth. I don't know if he'll change forever. Courts don't guarantee redemption. They guarantee accountability. But I know this. That day in my courtroom reminded a lot of people of something we forget too easily. Fame doesn't bend the law. Money doesn't rewrite it, and influence doesn't scare it. The law doesn't shout. It doesn't trend. It waits. And when someone finally says, "You can't touch me," the law answers, "Watch me." There's a moment after every case like this. A quiet one. No cameras. No crowds. Just reflection. I sat alone in chambers that evening, the card from Ms. Harper still tucked into my drawer. I keep things like that. Not trophies, reminders. Because when you sit on this bench long enough, you start to understand that the law isn't just about punishment. It's about restoring balance. Evan Cade didn't come into my courtroom as a villain. He came in as something more common, a man who had never been told no by anything that mattered. The world rewarded him for being loud, for being fearless, for being untouchable, until he wasn't. My father used to tell me something when I was young. He'd come home exhausted, hands cracked, clothes smelling of work, and he'd say, "Frank, the strongest thing in this country isn't money or fame. It's fairness, but only if good people protect it." That day in my courtroom, fairness needed protecting, and it got it. So if you ever find yourself believing the noise, believing that followers mean freedom, that attention means immunity, that power lives on a screen, remember this: the law doesn't chase clout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't trend, it waits, and when it speaks for everyone. I'm Judge Frank Caprio, and no matter who you are, how famous you think you are, or how untouchable you feel, in this courtroom and in this country, the law can always touch you.